go. Let's see. Is Bill, go ahead and get your video for me. There's the presentation. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Today is September 19th, 2024. It is MS National Office Hours time with the Microsoft Loop team. I said September 19th, right? It is September 19th.
You did. I was just thinking, yes, I got the date correct on the slide too.
You got it. I'm one of your hosts today. My name is Gary Chandler, and with me I have
Anthony Wallace.
And we are excited to introduce Patrick, Jake, and Dan on the Loop team. So thank you so much, Norma, for joining us today. We're excited to learn from you, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Garrett. We presented earlier this year about just like intro to Loop, and one of the things that we had requests about is talking about admin. So I'm actually going to turn this over to Dan and Jake to do the presentation, and I will be manning the chat. But Dan and Jake, take it away.
Sounds good. Hi, I'm Dan, and that's Jake. Oh, wait, there's a slide for us. There we go. We're product managers on the Loop team, and we just wanted to give you a quick tour of what typically takes between 60 and 90 minutes to communicate. So I'm just going to start with that. You may have a lot of questions. That's awesome. Put them in the chat. Okay, and we will try to save some time for some good ones. If there's a key burning question, feel free to interrupt us. If you're not already familiar with Loop, we've had some folks spend quite a bit of time compressing into 2 minutes the best way to describe what Loop really is. And so I'm just go ahead and hit play on this. It takes 2 minutes, and then we'll move on. Oh, pressed it too many times. Okay, there we go. Perfect. And the question in the chat is exactly what we're going to talk about next. Jake, you want to take these? I'll just throw things back and forth. Yeah, go for it.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a great segue question, Eric. So thank you. So you can go to the next slide. How should you be thinking about Loop and workspaces? So to put it simply, think of Loop workspaces as containers in the lens of an IT admin. And to end users, a workspace is like a modern folder. So to users, it's a place to collect things, files, to bring people in the loop and to collaborate together and edit these files, these loop documents, these pages. And so to end users, it's like a modern place to organize stuff and work on them. For IT admins, every Loop workspace is backed by a SharePoint embedded container. And you can think of containers like SharePoint sites with storage. SharePoint Embedded is a new SharePoint platform to create storage solutions for new applications like Loop and Microsoft Designer and more first-party and third-party apps in the future. So workspaces are containers. And on the right, we have Loop pages and Loop components. And both of these are files. They're .loop files. You can think of them like a Word file. And how you manage files is just the same. And what you can do with these files are the same. You have the same sharing permissions. You have sensitivity labels for files and the likes. And what's unique about Loop pages, the file itself, is there's a lot of great building blocks inside this type of file that you can create. Of course, text and tables, but you can also embed other rich capabilities like code blocks and mermaid diagrams and a bunch of other things. And components is the term we use when you can share a Loop file in another application like Teams or Outlook, and it embeds, it hydrates, or it loads the file in line in that application, so users don't need to switch between applications to collaborate. You can just work in your flow. And so we've started with Teams, chat, Teams channels, Outlook emails, whiteboards, and OneNote, which is a good segue to this next slide. This is explaining where the files are saved. And so I'll start at the top. This is a new experience just announced on Monday, Copilot pages. And these are .loop files that are being created with Copilot chat. And they're saved in a user's workspace, a user-owned personal workspace, which we'll talk more about in a future slide. Any Loop pages that are created inside a workspace in the Loop app is stored in that workspace, which is a SharePoint embedded container. And so files are saved in that container when created in that workspace. For Teams channels, these channels already have SharePoint storage. So we're putting the Loop component file in that storage the exact same way it would behave if you were to upload a Word document to a channel from your desktop. And then for the scenarios below, those are all being saved in a user's OneDrive for Business. So if you create a component in Teams chat or a private meeting, email, OneNote, whiteboard, that's when if you create the component, the Loop file in those locations, it'll be saved there. That's a little background on where things are stored.
Awesome. And there's one other quickie here. We're getting better at publishing all of the things that we're doing that are coming soon to the M365 public roadmap. So just type in Loop right here. Don't do the drop down yet. We don't have a drop down for Loop. So just look for Loop and you'll find it all running up here. That currently includes a lot of product enhancements, integrations across the M365 ecosystem, and will soon include a lot of the IT stuff that we're talking to you about today. Which leads us to, we know that managing content in a large organization sometimes takes quite a few sets of tools. And so you can see this is sort of the greatest hits list of a bunch of things we already support. And that's because we get the benefit of being a file in the SharePoint ecosystem. So we get sensitivity labels, we get, legal hold, we get the search and purview integration, we get all the sharing settings. And so like all that stuff is stuff we've already shipped. It's already available to you today. They're features you're familiar with. Coming imminently, we'll be finishing up with sensitivity labels on containers and the last kind of label, retention labels. I don't know if that's used a lot in EDU, but it's definitely used a lot in like law, pharma, those industries. And then once the final feature sensitivity labels is available, we'll be able to enable guest sharing. So you'll be able to do it outside your tenant for any .loop file. And as we mentioned sort of in the chat too, people were like watching the Copilot announcement from earlier this week. Those are .loop files, like Jake already mentioned. So all these things would apply to Copilot pages as well. And then this is the part that usually takes us about an hour to go through with IT folks. So I'm going to go really fast here. We've got a coming soon and a coming after section. So this is the stuff that's like actively being worked on right now. We intend to ship it very soon. We would like this to be on the M365 public roadmap as well. And that would include things like a per user workspace, of which Copilot Pages is the first. And that's lifetime managed like a OneDrive. So with your user account. So if somebody leaves your organization, their OneDrive goes away. So would all of their user workspaces. And then some admin management capabilities for the shared workspaces, which you should think of them like SharePoint sites, like Jake was saying before. You'll be able to do all the updates that you need in SharePoint Admin Center. You can delete them, you can restore them, you can change memberships of them, you can promote multiple owners, all those things you'll be able to do in the SharePoint Admin Center. We'll make it possible for you to put multiple owners on a Loop workspace in the app as well. And then the other sort of second half of Loop Workspaces is M365 groups integration. So those are the ones you could create in Outlook, or you could create a Teams team, and those are groups behind the scenes. And all of the content that's associated with the group attaches to that group for a lifecycle management. So if you have a SharePoint site, you have a Loop workspace, you have a planner board, you have forms. If those are all created in the group, it's kind of like one big lifetime managed unit. So when the group goes away, all that stuff goes in the recycle bin at the same time. You restore it, all of it comes restored out. So that's that integration space there. And then of course, you only manage the members of it in one place, which is in the group. You don't do it in each of those other places. And then finally, a lot of folks use third-party tools to do their governance. So like if you making sure that everybody has multiple owners on shared workspaces, or maybe you're requiring people in your organization to attest that they've checked their sharing settings every 3 or 6 months. All those things can access SharePoint containers, SharePoint embedded containers, which is what Loop workspaces are, when this capability is released, which will be coming soon. Kind of covered these. There'll be some enhancements to user workspaces. Similar to OneDrive, you get like a notification email, you click a link, you can move some stuff around. You need to finish delivering the user experience for that for a user-owned container for Loop. Also, this is one we get a lot, which is, hey, I'd like to see how much Loop is being looping in my Loop environment. I want to see. And we would like .loop to be there, just like docx is. So when you go to your admin usage reports and check on your Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, we'd like you to see the Loop app there as well. An end user recycle bin for workspaces. So if someone deletes one, it goes away. Today, that's an IT call. In the future, they'll have a recycle bin and they can pull it out of. And then last but not least on here is the ability for in a shared workspace that's not associated with any existing group. That might be something that you say, I'm going to have the sales, the marketing, or maybe I'd say the 4th and the 5th and the 6th grade teachers. We're all working on this together. We'll put those groups as members to all of this. And you can have one repository where a lot of that information sits, and you're just managed by the many groups that you've added into that space. 15 minutes. I might pause for questions here, or let's see, what are we at? We have two or three more concepts. I'm gonna just go and I'll let the chat keep going with questions. Yeah, we'll come back.
We'll come back and
Jake, tell us about Loop workspace types.
Yes, so this is another segue to a question in the chat, which was tell me more about ownership and management. So this is around the ownership of different workspace types. This is new information, so let me walk you through this. Today, all Loop workspaces that are created through the Loop app are tenant-owned workspaces. And this is similar to communication sites, SharePoint communication sites. Those are also tenant-owned, which means the lifecycle of that container or site lives on with the tenant, which means most IT admins would like to have multiple owners of that thing, so they can manage it appropriately, and you can make sure you have a person that is the point owner of this thing. And so we're working on the ability to promote a second owner to a workspace and expose all that goodness. What's also will be coming in the future is the ability to invite other groups, M365 groups, to this workspace. So it's easier to invite groups versus inviting individuals, as you can see in this illustration. And then also in the future, we'll work on the ability to invite a group as a visitor or read-only member versus owner versus member, like SharePoint sites. So that's a little bit more about tenant-owned workspaces, but everything today that's created in the Loop app is tenant-owned. What we're working towards is the ability to also create workspaces that are group-owned or specific to a team. So you can imagine going to Loop, creating a workspace, and saying, I want to create a workspace for the faculty team, at my school. And that means everyone in that faculty team gets access to the workspace, and the roles of those members reflect in the app. So the owners of the team become owners of the workspace, and everything gets managed with that team, just like planner boards are today and other M365 resources. And we won't restrict it to one workspace per team. You can have multiple workspaces per team because we know there are multiple work streams or projects that are happening in a team. So that's the middle one. That's not available today, but will be available in the future. And the third model is user-owned workspaces. We're starting with each user will get one and only one user-owned SharePoint embedded container. We'll likely call this the personal workspace. And that means the lifetime of this workspace is managed with that user account. And it's just like OneDrive for Business. If they leave the organization, we'll have some automation flows to soft delete the content, and then after a certain time, hard delete. And we're going to work on the flows to be able to set a second owner, their manager or someone else, to go through and make sure important work information is retained. But this user-owned, the very first instance of this user-owned container is Copilot pages. So every Copilot page that's created is inherently private. It's a one-on-one chat with Copilot. So when we create that file, you have to say, where should we save it? We don't want to save it in a shared location, like a tenant-owned or group-owned container. So it's saved in a user-owned SharePoint embedded container. And so these concepts will start to appear in the Loop app as well, and allow users to work in private, or work with a group, or work with a more flexible communication site like Workspace. And so we'll go to the next slide.
Yes.
If there's
So I've got
one, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've got an admin switches section. I also have a little diagram, but I stuck it in the hidden slides. I left you guys can move around in the slides if you want to. Slides 14 and 15 are a little bit more, if you're an architecture thinker and you want to see all the little storage containers. And there's a question in the chat, since we're on the concepts of storage. All SharePoint embedded containers count in your SharePoint tenant quota of storage, regardless of the type. So whatever your limit is, 25 terabytes, I think, is the default, but maybe you're paying for a gazillion. Your SharePoint embedded content, which would be Loop Workspaces, will count into that gazillion that you're paying for already. So. All right, admin switches. So if you, let's see, I'll just jump right to it. So there are Loop ecosystem switches here on the top, and then there's a set of settings down here that are specific to electronic communications. This is usually a conversation that I have with the financial services industry and nobody else. And so I'll just assume that you're not as interested in them, but if you put something in the chat, I'll cover them as well. So on the admin switches on the top here, there's basically three settings. There's one that enables components in the ecosystem, and today that's in Outlook and in OneNote and in Whiteboard. And then there's, unfortunately, technologically, we're just using a different property for the Teams one. It's on our backlog to get everybody onto cloud policy, but if you wanted to turn it off in Teams, you have to do a different technology. But the intent there is, I love components, I want them everywhere, or I don't like components yet, I'm still studying something or reading the white papers before I can enable it. And so that's the switch here for components in the ecosystem. Then there's components or workspaces, components and workspaces, all in loop.cloud.microsoft. So if you were thinking of it like, I'm going to boot the Loop app, and I'm going to make the place where we work, and I'm going to invite people to it, and I'm going to create pages, and we're going to say, why aren't we done yet? And I'm going to mention people just in a shared space. That's workspaces. And so you can say, you can turn those on and off independently. And then today, well, sorry, not today, it's been a few days, 3 days ago, on the 16th of September, we released Copilot pages. And as Jake mentioned, those create a user-owned, the first user-owned workspace, and there's a separate switch just for those. So a little bit of color on what the switches control. Because we create files in the SharePoint ecosystem, you're creating an object that someone can have access to and share a link to. when you turn a switch off, that does not remove files or delete them or destroy access. So what you're really doing with these switches is you're turning off the ability to create new ones. And so if you turn these off here, any link that you've previously shared will still be a link. It's still in the message, just like if you delete a YouTube video, the link doesn't get deleted from every place that it's referenced. And if you were to click that thing and the object is in my SharePoint and I still have access to it, I can open it. And that will open what we call the Loop component viewer and editor, because it's the only application on the planet that opens .loop files. So you'll still have access to that thing, but you will not be able to create new ones. So that's what you're turning off as an administrator. You're saying, no more looping. I don't want any new looping. That's what you turn off. Here's just a screenshot of those tools. If you're not familiar, this is what cloud policy looks like, and this is what the SharePoint admin settings look like for the team setting. And then last but not least, Jake, you want to take the SharePoint Admin Center?
Yeah, can do. And I saw a question in the chat as well. So this is where you manage SharePoint embedded containers. So this is the SharePoint Admin Center. On the left-hand side, you can see home and then sites. That's where your SharePoint sites exist and where you can manage them. And there's a new section underneath sites called containers. And this is where all the SharePoint embedded containers will appear. The reason this is not just Loop is because there will be many applications that can use SharePoint embedded. Loop is one of them. And so you'll see all the application name equal Loop workspaces. And so each row will be a workspace that has been created in your organization. What's coming soon, that's not here today yet, is we're going to be listing as well the ownership type. So whether it's user owned, group owned, or tenant owned. And then you can also see the specific owners of the container and members, files, number of files, activity, storage size, sensitivity label, all of that. And so this is where you can view them today. Now, if you don't see containers in your SharePoint Admin Center, there is another admin role for containers that you'll need to be set to. And so I think we have instructions we can share on that in this link. And a little bit about management in SharePoint.
Perfect.
I will also note that there are a few things that are not finished yet that will be this quarter or this calendar year to make sure changes you make here reflect properly in the Loop app. Whether you add a second owner, you want to change members, you want to delete the container, you want to restore it, things like that. You want to change the sensitivity label. That is work in progress.
Yes. And you can see like that's on our roadmap right here. When you update things in the SharePoint Admin Center, we want them to reflect in the Loop app. That's on our roadmap. So if you go change some of these things today, you will boot Loop and you will not see the changes until we deliver that roadmap item. Cool. I think we got to everything and we have enough time for the bonus, which was demo the Copilot Pages thing. Neither Jake nor I set up a test tenant to be able to do this without accidentally revealing everything to the whatever this recording goes to. So you have a choice. Show of hands. Let's do. I'll do raise your hands if you want the live demo with the recording stopped, or if not a lot of people raise their hands because they think it's benefit, then we'll do the video version. It says it goes to YouTube, so I'm definitely stopping the recording if it goes to YouTube because I have no idea what's going to show up in my inbox. How many people we got on the call? Let's do a vote thingy here. Oh, 130, and I only see 12 hands. Okay, people are saying benefit of the world. Let's do the video. All right. And don't worry, it does work on my machine. I'm not just like saying that, haha, I picked the thing that I wanted. I kind of did want to do the video or the demo. So I will switch my sharing over to here. Oops, not to YouTube. Somebody delete that.
We'll get it edited.
Thank you. Here. So now I'll do my share sound, and this is the Copilot Pages video. It's actually quite a good one at demonstrating the value of Loop inside Copilot and what a page is super useful for. So I'll do share sound.
Introducing Copilot Pages. Pages is a dynamic, persistent canvas designed for multiplayer AI collaboration. Let's say you work for an EV charging company and there's a new business opportunity. You start in BizChat, where you ask Copilot to do some research on the web. You want some basic information, like the number of daily passengers and information on the number of parking spaces with EV chargers. Copilot pulls the information and you turn the response into a page so you can keep working. You want to share what you've got so far and ask your colleagues to help. So you tag them. Now everyone can immediately start to contribute and you can see their edits in real time. Next, you need to get started on a plan for your proposal. So let's switch over to the Work tab. Here, you can ask Copilot to reference a previous plan to give you a head start. Copilot pulls in the deliverables, work back schedule, and owners, which you add to your page. Immediately, your colleagues can begin updating the work back schedule and assigning owners. The next step is the proposal outline. You want to review the customer needs, so a coworker uses Copilot to pull in a bulleted list of requirements from a recorded meeting with the customer last week. In seconds, Copilot is able to synthesize the discussion and give your team the key takeaways. Now you're ready to start building the proposal. Last year, you landed a similar deal, so you want to reuse that great work. You ask Copilot to use that proposal as a starting point and update it to include the new customer requirements. With one last click, Copilot pulls it all together for you. Pages is an entirely new pattern of work, designed for human to AI to human collaboration.
Yeah, cool. So that sort of combo of how Loop and Copilot can work really well together. It makes us really proud on the Loop team. It makes us really proud to have been working on Copilot for that. So yes. We have 3 minutes. We can take questions. I can't believe we got through that content. It usually takes 60 to 90 minutes. I definitely felt like I was, Jake, we were pushing hard to get through that. But good questions in the chat and shoot them out now. Do I have a hand up or is that legacy? Looks like it went down.
Yeah, I think it just went down.
All right.
See, there's one. Walter?
Any chance you guys can add the views feature from SharePoint, where in Loop multiple people can have different sorting capabilities of the Loop component?
Private views for tables or for anything. Yeah, that's a good one. We like it. It's on our list of things. I don't have any timeline or anything for us to comment on it publicly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yes, thanks for dropping the link in the chat there, Jake. I wanted to try the share in meeting button, but we didn't do it. I shared my screen.
Yeah.
You guys can ask any question you want. You could do an AMA, you could do the rude stuff. We can handle it. If you're mean, I might just ask you to back down, but.
Quick question, if it's okay. Sorry, I can't raise my hand. I'm on remote. So
Yeah, sure.
if I'm in the Loop Copilot pages, I'm in VP, I pull up data from let's say a budget or something like that, and then share into my administrative assistant who shouldn't see that. Does that automatically share that information out from my OneDrive or SharePoint page or something like that?
Yeah, so when you're interacting with Copilot Chat one-on-one, everything you ask Copilot is between you and Copilot. When you say put it in a page, that's like copying it into a Word doc, putting it in a Loop file. Whoever you've shared that with, that's what they see. So everything that you put in a shared location, everybody who can see the shared stuff sees it. Did that help?
I will add as well that the label of the information Copilot got the information from is applied to the page. So if you're labeling things correctly and your VP gets highly confidential business information like an Excel table of the budget, the page will be classified as highly confidential and it will restrict sharing permissions for whatever your tenant defines for those labels. So in a perfect world where things are labeled correctly, it should help prevent oversharing or accidental sharing. But as Dan mentioned as well, it's similar to just copying from Excel and pasting it in a new file and then going, oh, I want to share this file with someone. So it's, yeah, hope that helps.
Thanks.
Yeah, the labeling is an important thing. It's like with Copilot, you only have access to the things you have access to when you're chatting with it. and the label will get automatically applied to the file you move that content to.
Awesome. Well, with that, we are at time. Loop team, that was phenomenal. I think I threw it in the chat that for all future IT admin focus sessions, like y'all just set the bar. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much for going into the detail that you did and sharing that with this community. So we will get this recorded and posted up on YouTube. It will be a hot minute because Heather is out this week. But we will get this posted as soon as we can. And yes, we will edit it just a little bit there at the end so that Dan's calendar is not viewable to the entire world.
Perfect.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, a round of applause for the Loop team. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to the next presentation very, very soon. I'm going to kick you all out now. So y'all have a fantastic week. Thanks everyone. We'll see y'all.
Right on. Thanks.